What's going on, investors? Dust here from Investments. Today is May 9th, 2023. And today we're going to look at the crypto markets, look at Bitcoin, look at some stocks, and see what we're seeing in the market, see where we're standing, see if we can identify anything, if anything's giving us painting a clear picture for us to make some actions, or just tell us where we're headed. It's been a rather down day for the most part. Not much action, so we'll start with Bitcoin. And if you are new here, I'm glad to have you. My name is Dest, and this is my trading journal on my path to financial independence, and trading being one of the tools in my toolbox. So if you do have any that you're looking at and you'd like to request them, feel free to drop them in the chat. I would be happy to look at whatever stocks or cryptos you guys are looking at. Just get them on my peripheral, right? So whether you're looking at this, viewing this in live real time, or even in the video, feel free to leave those in the chat. Anyways, let's start off with Bitcoin like we always do and just take a gander at what we're seeing. So we were drawing this ascending wedge pattern, and yesterday or 2 days ago, you decided to break to the downside, right? It looks like you realistically, you hit this high at around 31,000. You came back up to test that, weren't able to get as high, and then came back a third time and weren't even able to get as high as the second time, showing that you're kind of losing strength, right? It's just kind of telling you that the buyers are no longer showing up to the market. They're not able to push this higher. What does that tell us? Well, near term, it looks like you might be due for a little bit of a pullback. However, if we negate this ascending wedge and try to figure out where we're pulling back to, the current level seems like good as a level as any. Reason being is because it's correlating to the recent local lows. So seeing a reversal here would kind of make sense. However, that support doesn't have a lot of strength. So realistically, we were saying, as of the break of this ascending wedge, we were saying we could either see a pullback to 28,000. That fell apart, right? We dipped way lower than that, and then a real level that we need to hold, or the real level that has support at it, is at 25,300, right? And this is correlating to this resistance touch here and this support touch back in May of 2022. So realistically, if we were to be pulling back, that would be the level you'd want to see be retested. And look at this. I'm going to have to edit this because my logo is right in my face. Okay, new logos, new watermarks, editing it in, trying to be an official real boy. So anyways, we're getting it going. All right, so seeing a reversal here at this point would make sense, and you might start retesting this downsloping supply line, right? Could see it pull to the top of this range and potentially pull back. So let's wait, see what happens tomorrow, and see if this picture gets any clearer. We are already in the 4-hour time frame, right? We could zoom in even further and see, but I'm not seeing anything crazy. Your MACD showing positive momentum. RSI is 52, which is dead center basically. But the real thing is your volume's kind of waning as well. And let's go out to the 1 day. So what I'm trying to say is, like, you might get more short-term pullback, would make sense. And even if you pull back to something like that 25.3 level, would not be the end of the world, right? So we were saying you could pull back there and bounce off of that, and it would be a pretty strong indication. So what do I think is going to happen? Two scenarios. First one, we're going to play in this little wedge that's forming a little bit longer, or we're going to fall further to the downside to 25,000, and then we're going to bounce higher. Either way, I think if we do pull back, it is a short-term pullback, and this trend is going to continue for at least a little bit. What I think is happening, obviously liquidity is drying up with the higher interest rates. There's less people willing to take risky investments, especially when you could get something like a CD or high interest rate savings or checking account where you can actually make money by having your money now. It just makes it less likely that people are going to invest in risky assets like this. So the liquidity is drying up. Not to mention, liquidity for altcoins is drying up because there's not a lot of places for US customers to make transactions very cleanly and legally, right? So when you look at doing some of these like Uniswaps or like these swap exchanges, very hard to track your cost basis, right? Very, very difficult. So you really want some of these exchanges like Bittrex was, where you could kind of, you know, do your business in a US based account, right? And it would give you all your transaction data. There are still exchanges that exist that US customers can use. However, it's just the doors are closing to a lot of these places. Bittrex being the latest one to fall. Okay, that is our analysis for Bitcoin. Let's see what this parallel channel looked like. We had an alternate view of what Bitcoin could be, and we have broken out of that parallel channel to the downside, so no longer valid in that. If I cut a little piece of cheesecake and take it to school, would it still be cold? P.S. Good night, I love you. Good question. I don't think so. But you could probably put a cooling pack in there or something cool. All right, so with that said, Bitcoin really needs to dictate what's going on in this market, and this needs to, well, it always is the driver, but it's going to be the driver of this market, and as such, you are not going to see a lot of the cryptos really do much of anything. I think Ethereum is probably faring somewhat the best out of all of them right now, and I think that's because supply is starting to really tighten up on Ethereum, right? As we are burning at such a high rate, being inflationary, people are locking Ethereum up. It's just the liquidity is kind of drying up on Ethereum, and I think that's starting to show its head. We're gonna look at Litecoin and then BNB. Actually, let's do Bitcoin dominance first, because I want to see if that's starting to drop. Bitcoin dominance has not moved. So even though Bitcoin has taken a massive pullback, Bitcoin dominance hasn't really done anything. Kind of interesting to see that happen. You would expect that Bitcoin pulls back and Bitcoin dominance would pull back as well. Interesting. Dropping the link to the Discord in the chat here. Would be happy to have you join up. And also, if you have requests, feel free to drop them in the chat. Bam, bam, bam. Okay. So Bitcoin dominance, I mean, this still looks like a breakout is imminent on Bitcoin dominance, except for like what's going on with Bitcoin. Something like LTC versus Bitcoin pulling to new local lows, and I imagine all these other alts are doing something similar. Like, let's just look at something like SHIB versus BTC, all-time low almost. Very low risk entry for that versus the US or versus the BTC. And look at like this, 1, 2, 3 tests on this. Like, okay, how many other ones look rather bullish? All right, we're gonna continue on. Getting distracted here. Let me just plow through some of these. Look at these low risk entries. I'll go low risk entry, right? Pulling back to this recent low from December 22, almost pulling back to the all-time low. Tron is a piece of shit. I don't even look at that anymore. Same thing with Tezos. ETC, I imagine, is doing something similar. Wow. All right. What is this telling me? Well, when you're looking at these pulling back to these significant lows, are these ready to start turning around? Are these ready to springboard, right? Are these ready? Well, EOS falling lower. I'm just kind of plowing through these real quick and just seeing if I can identify anything. Kind of interesting to see these hit almost all-time lows, and we're gonna look at versus BTC chart here as well and see hitting that local low, right? So what this is telling me is that some of these alts are pushing to these almost all-time low levels where the risk to entry is very low, considering, how do I want to phrase this? Like, when you're at these all-time lows, you don't have anything down here to take you further. You could easily say, like, when you're going to make a trade, let's just set this up like we would really do this long position. You could easily, why is this so long? You could easily set your stop loss pretty low and then just ride this position. Obviously you want to see it form up, right? You want to see a formation form at this point. However, seeing these hit these almost all-time lows or sometimes local lows, and you know, these are good spots for reversal. Something like Atom, like this would be a fantastic spot for a reversal. Let's see what it says on the Fibby, and you're at the 618. Excellent spot to see a reversal on something like Atom. Very interesting. It's kind of changing my outlook right now, and this is why we do this, right? To see if we can spot anything that might give us indications of something happening, right? So what does it tell me? Well, I still think Bitcoin could be playing in this range, and maybe you could see something like Atom. I'm going to go back to that because that chart looked the nicest. Algo looked low. You could see something like this start to run. I'm sorry, I'm derailing. Let's continue on. I need to formulate this theory more strongly before I present it, right? Okay. Bitcoin look good, Litecoin done, Ethereum done. Some of the altcoins, let's look at some of the ones we typically look at. ICX kind of falling. Level you want to see hold is 23 cents. T-Fuel falling, putting in lower highs, putting in a lower low, not looking fantastic, below the 200 day. Would like to see 4 cents hold. That's kind of your level, and if that fails, then you're pushing to local lows, which would be 3 cents, and there's nothing in between. So Theta falling, however, still not below this local low, so you're not putting in lower lows on this time frame yet, but looking like you're about to, right? I don't see you having anything There's nothing telling me this is going to reverse at this point. I think realistically you're pulling back to 80 cents. And you're hoping that that continues. You also don't want to put in a lower low than this low. Would not be a good indicator. However, we drew these lines thinking that we're at least pulling back to 80 cents and potentially falling even lower, right? That 71 cent level is the local low, recent all-time low. Correlates to these multiple resistance touches back in the 2020 time frame, but the real level you need to hold is 57 cents, right? And that's the support that was built in that same time frame, as well as the resistance touches that were from August 2020, as well as this nice spike that happened in May of 2020. So something like theta, I think we're pulling back a little harder, right? We're going to test some of these levels before continuing on. Okay. Chili's was one I wanted to look at as well, because this seemed like you still had this nice upsloping demand line, right? You had this green upsloping demand line and you still have not come back to touch it. So looking a little bit stronger than some of the other players in the market, right? However, this is relatively range bound, right? Where we're looking between around 13 cents to you're doing pretty good, you know. You're still rocking between there. What you would like to see on this is you would definitely like to see it not fall below this low that was put in on the 10th of March, right? That's pretty significant. So you want to see it, if it pulls back to this green line, you want to see it continue on higher and bounce off of that. So a lot of these alts are looking like they're almost poised to run. They're pulling back to critical levels. Maybe not putting in the formations yet, but definitely starting to show that they're reaching these levels where formations would start to form. I don't know how else to phrase that. Okay. There's not a lot of other cryptos I want to look at today unless there is some requests. I don't see any, but if you're in the chat, feel free to drop them in there. Otherwise, we are going to switch to some stocks, and we're just going to check on the stocks that we have current trades in, and I'll go through what I'm expecting with some of those. One more crypto, sorry. I did not look at Litecoin because I blew through it. Falling below that green demand line, playing at the 200-day, you're right below the 200-day. MACD is still negative momentum. RSI is really, really low. Bearish control zone not looking super juiced. Yeah. Overall, not looking fantastic. However, I do want to identify or explain this, and I say this every time we look at Litecoin. You have this massive upsloping green line dating back all the way from 2017, where every time you've pulled back to this level, you just have a nice sizable rally, right? The smallest of which was a 550% run, which is fantastic rally that you would want to capitalize. Since touching this line again, we have not pulled back to it, and I'm anticipating that we are making a formation much like this back in 2017, where you're starting to show accumulation. You're starting to show that the buyers are going to defend certain levels, and you're starting to stair step your way higher to that spring off from there. You are still putting in higher lows on the weekly. Let's see, when we look at something like the daily, still higher lows as well. So you're not looking super bad. Would like to see you get above that 200-day moving average. Would like to see you stay above this green line, and then eventually start to put some higher higher highs as well. All of it. Yeah, you just want to see all of it, right? 81, oops, let's get this moving. 8167 is a pretty important level here in the local time frame, where you have a support touch as well as a resistance touch. So that would be the first one I'd like to see. I'd like to see you break 8167, but then I feel like you're probably going to be a little bit range bound between 93.55 and 81.67. But a break above 93 would be pretty strong, and probably make a test to 106. What I don't like about this chart is I don't like this, I used the wrong tool. I don't like this high being lower than this high. What it means to me is you made this nice formation. You were getting buyers, people were buying up the supply, then someone's selling it, right? And you're buying it up again, people are buying it up, but they weren't able to drive this price higher than previous. What that tells me is that the buyers are losing momentum. Just not one of the negative indicators for this, right? So what do I think is going to happen? Well, I think you're at a pretty important level to bounce off of, and I think you'll start to reverse on something like Litecoin and respect that green ascending demand line, as well as the massive green ascending demand line that dates back to 2017. Just one of these coins that I think is going to do well. And realistically, let's look at something real quick. Bitcoin congestion visualization. Let's see how congested Bitcoin still is. Still over 100,000 transactions in the backlog, right? Last time this happened, I know me and there was a bunch of other people in the time frame. I think this was 2017 or 2018, where Bitcoin was congested as well. Transactions were taking a long time. The fees were pretty massive. I think they were like $30 to $40 at the time. Right now, $6 is not too crazy. However, when that happened last time, a lot of people switched and they were using something quicker. They were using something with less fees. They were using Litecoin. So to transact between exchanges, to transact to, whatever, people were using Litecoin instead of Bitcoin to fund wallets. And they would just cash it out or do whatever they were going to do on the back end, right? So like, maybe I have money in Coinbase, I'll buy Litecoin, transfer it to something like Binance, and then transfer it back into US dollars. This actually benefited me last time I did this, because I got in early, where I was one of the first, not one of the first, but I was some of the first people that were doing this using Litecoin. And then the price just skyrocketed because all the people were buying it to use it, right? So the price just kept going up and up. Well, here I was sitting with a bunch of Litecoin in my account, where it was just like, hey dude, price keeps going up. So, and I was just using it to transact between exchanges at the time. So could we see something like that with Bitcoin being so congested? Potentially. I think you'd need the fees to get a little bit higher. Or a little bit more congested and slower. Okay, so we looked at all the crypto. Let's switch to stocks. We're gonna start with GE, because this boomer coin has just continued to roll and roll and roll. And I'm gonna break down this trade for you real quick here, and we're gonna zoom out to the weekly, because you have to with something that has been around this long. I need to delete all these lines. Anyways, so we identified a pretty important level at 3161, and this correlated to this support test back in March of 09, as well as some support playing around in 1992, as well as a resistance level from June of 1990. This level was identified, pretty important, and we pulled back to this level and reversed off of this level. What does that tell you? Well, it's respecting that level as a significant level. That's an important level. And on top of it, you had a nice longer term formation form up on this. You had a head and shoulder, or inverse head and shoulders right here, where you had the shoulder, the head, and the other shoulder. The second shoulder did not get as far as the first shoulder. So what does that tell you? Well, as it was descending, people were buying it up much more strong on the second shoulder, which means it is just so ready to pop that it wasn't able to even pull back to the same level as that other shoulder. So you were sitting like this, and this baby is just ready to pop back up, right, and spring you higher. And it did. And ever since it broke the neckline, you've just been on a nice run. The way you do your measured move is neckline to the top of the head. You copy that and you paste it on the breakout of the neckline, set you up for a 56% run, which is fantastic, right? And that level will be at about 130. However, I think there's going to be a little extra that happens after that level, because this green supply line is just, I mean, there's so much time on this supply line. First touch was 07, second touches were 2016. So I think realistically you're going to play there, but you definitely want to start capitalizing before you get to that level. Like, this is your profit level, and you might even want to cut it short to front run some of these people selling before you. Now let's switch to a more actionable trade right now. GE is already running, but something like Amazon is looking friggin-tastic right now. Try not to curse. However, identify the key levels. All right, what do we see? $80.50 plus or minus a couple. Well, you have this nice pullback test as support. You have this playing around, touching it as support multiple times, and we're looking at the weekly. Of course, if you zoomed in on the daily, you could see even more. But then you also have this previous resistance turned support in 2018. Key level, no lying, right? But then you also have this secondary key level at about 101. I have it marked 101.57, where this rally turned to resistance. It hit these, was unable to continue until almost 2 years later, right, when it finally broke out of that resistance level and then back touched it as support in May of 2022. So we identified the two key levels, the key range for this, right? And now we're going to zoom in on a smaller time frame. So we started to pull back in, let's paint this picture for you, 2021. And we just kind of pulled back ever since. And where did it start to reverse? Well, that same level at $80.50. Pretty important. So at that level, we were also putting in an inverted head and shoulders, where you got a breakout of that neckline. On top of that, you have a broadening wedge where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 touches on that wedge, and then a break to the upside. And then you're also got a nice upsloping demand line here. I should really change that to green. But ever since then, you've just been running, and we identified this back in February. We've been preaching this. I mean, you could go back into the live streams. Every time we've done a live stream, we've been saying, hey, Amazon's setting up, Amazon's setting up. And then we got the breakout of this green top line of the broadening wedge and a breakout of the neckline on the inverted head and shoulders, and we said, okay, this is actionable at this point, and we purchase it. And realistically, you're not too far from that actionable level. You've taken off a little bit, but you have off the inverted head and shoulders 21% gain, and to the top of the broadening wedge formation, you're talking about a 67% gain, and you're respecting that 101.57 level perfectly. I mean, look at how many times you've touched this and touching it as support, and that's exactly what you want to see. Actionable trade right here, and this is like fantastic setup, not only for this technicals, but fundamentally I don't know about you, but I get a lot of Amazon packages. I know everyone around me gets a lot of Amazon packages. I don't see it going away in the next 10 years. If anything, I feel like Amazon will probably be stronger. So one of those companies that makes sense to also own, and just like a standard portfolio without even analyzing its chart, right? But just seems to be, or it just happens to be a very nice entry position to own something like that. Another one like that is Intel. And we identified this one because we were looking at repatriatizing semiconductor production and who's going to benefit from some of the investments from from basically bringing them back to the US, right? They're going to start throwing a bunch of money at some of these companies. And we're saying, you know, we're putting in this 1, 2, 3 bottoms, almost a triple bottom at this key level of 25.50. Why is that a key level? Well, let's start scrolling left. Support touch, resistance touch, resistance touch, resistance. I mean, look at how many touches occurred at this key level, dating back all the way to August of 1997. If there was anywhere that this should be reversing, it's right here. And we're going to clean up the chart a little bit, get rid of these fibs. Just looking fantastic. This one, I feel like, is poised to run. You're just starting to show strength. You're just starting to respect some of these important levels. Again, you're above the 200-day. Momentum looks like it's about to turn bullish, very close to it. One of these that everything's going for it. It just needs people to start buying. PAA is another fantastic trade, and I need to remember to clear up some of these charts. Okay, I'm zooming out to paint the picture for you. So I'm going to take you all the way back in time to November of 1999, where you started to put in this nice structure where you had the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves, right? Bringing you to your all-time high. Then you promptly had your ABC correction that took you to this very important level at about $4.70. Oh, what do you know? It correlates back to your all-time low, your previous all-time low of December of 1999. Well, that shows that that important level is being respected. And then on top of it, you're starting to build this nice little wedge formation. You're starting to build it. It's tightening up, and it keeps breaking to the upside. If we keep zooming in, this is a very actionable trade at this level. Let me just clean this up, get rid of some of these. You keep breaking to the upside, your volume's starting to come in, you're showing that buyers are here, they're ready to start purchasing it. Earnings was on May, surprise to the upside, what do you know, right? Above the 200-day, negative momentum is starting to subside on the MACD, and you're formally above that top line of that wedge, right? So this is an actionable level as well for PAA. Only concern is that you might fall back into this wedge to play around a little bit more before springing out for the real test. What I do not like about the current levels, this high compared to this high, lower, right? You don't want to see that, because what it's telling you is, as buyers were here, you had people sell it into a little bit of oblivion, and then buyers entered again and were unable to bring it higher, right? Would like to see this pop above that local high of 1332 to continue on. And realistically, you got higher lows, so this looks fantastic. What else we got? Any requests in the chat? I don't see any. So let us check to see if we have any on Discord. Nothing showing up over there, so we're looking good to go. All right, so I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate you watching. Oh, dude, I gotta show you this one before we go to PEMIF. This has been a lithium play that I've been in for years at this point, and pulling back to important levels in the start of the year, building the 1, 2, 3 sisters almost, where it's like you're putting in these very sharp lows and then just springing off of there. I had these levels drawn in, was not taking action, but you're up about 155% over the past 2 to 3 days, right? Just someone is buying this, someone is accumulating. Look at these massive volume spikes. So I don't know if this is something like an insider buying or what the deal is, but there is someone buying this at these important levels. They're accumulating it. I'm pointing it out because this one is odd to me and it's on my radar, so I need to at least voice it. And this is one I usually skip over because it hasn't done much of anything, just been pulling back for years now. Looking like it's starting to wake up though, starting to do stuff. All right, that's all I got for tonight. I appreciate you if you stopped in. I appreciate you if you leave a thumbs up or subscribe or whatever happens, you know the whole spiel. That's all I got. Till next time.